and it's it's the American like mid-Atlantic. Similar, but you go to Manchester and it's like, oh my god, I'm in England and there's so much pressure because they want me to do their accent, but they're all like, hello. Do the accent, oh my god, we love you. Do the thing where he says like, you know, just simply one hell of a butler, and I'm like, simply one hell of a butler. They're like, yeah, it's good. So funny. Oh, it was in Sunderland too, which is northern England, which is the accent is really thicker, and they just kind of like to just leave their mouths open a lot. So they're like, hello, guys, how you doing? I'm like, two countries separated by a common language. Like all weekend I was going around and I would hear people say this, and I want you to just listen to this weird little collection of sounds and tell me what you think is being said. They'd be like, Mr. Tatum, Mr. Compo. What do you think that means? Don't bother. It means, can I have a photo? Somehow England is just so comfortable with its language that it can take 9 syllables and just condense them into a diphthong. So, can I have a photo, please? Becomes campo, play. And you're like, it took me all weekend. You just kind of say yes, not really knowing what you're getting into, and then you realize, oh! Go for it. He's not American.
That maybe he's faking his British accent, just like you.
That hurt. Your cosplay sucks. Cheers! I love it. It was great. No, it's wonderful. Is that snake for real? No, never mind. Hi, darling.
Oh, there's a line.
You're like, I don't want to talk to you now. You're scary. What can I do for you?
I was just wondering, could you talk a bit about the experience of being in Baccano and being Isaac?
Baccano! Show of hands, Baccano. If you haven't seen Baccano, go watch it. Become a better person. I think some guy's leaving. He's gonna go do it right now. Yes, sir. Awesome. Good listener. Baccano was really fun. So Baccano was mine and Caitlin Glass's first time to play a couple like that. We'd been testing 1, 2. I had also at that point in my career I'd always tended to play, because of my voice, you know, I tend to have this kind of low kind of tone. So I usually play sinister characters or very low-key characters like Domaki and Halleck, who just kind of sit there and have a kind of even like, yeah, you're a moron. And that's very, so, and I tend to try to physically embody the voice in the booth. So just to give you an idea of what it was like to play most of the characters I had played up until Isaac and Baccano, I'd kind of stand there with my hands in my pockets with my arms folded, because that was just the characters. They'd be very kind of, you know, over it. Or very sinister, so they're like this, you know. There wasn't a lot of movement. They tended to be very contained. Isaac is huge and over the top, and so I tended, and his voice is very much like this, and everything is, hey, oh my goodness, oh, this is coffee, this is great, you know, I understand they make this in India, or whatever. He's just ridiculous all over the place. And you know, you have Miria, who's Caitlin, going, wow, and it's hysterical. And they're such a lovely couple. I mean, they're so in love with each other, and they're such idiots that they're geniuses. It's like they've eaten their way through to the other side, and like suddenly they're brilliant, and they just have it all together when everyone's like, they're ridiculous, but they're always cosplaying. So it was just the energy of the animation and the music, especially because of the era that it's set in, and I happen to love that sort of 1920s and like an earlier sort of jazz, Tin Pan Alley stuff. I don't know why, I just do. So I got really into it, and I was extremely big and mobile in the booth in ways that would later, I'm convinced someone that worked on My Hero Academia as an animator must have watched me in the booth playing Isaac and thought, oh, he'd make a good character, because like the hands everywhere. And I had never done that in the booth, especially for Tyler, the show's director. He'd always seen me playing bad guys and very contained, you know. And here I am suddenly doing things like this and rah, and he would just watch me and be like, I have never seen, what the hell is going on? Because there's a big glass wall between, you know, where the mic stand is and the director's station, so they can, you know, he and the engineer can see everything I'm doing, which is sometimes a good thing. sometimes not. Because I'm very physical. I do weird things in the booth. So like if I'm supposed to be like, you know, under distress or something, I might twist my arm behind my back and do this so I can get this noise, you know, just it's little things like that. And if you look at me, you think this is a crazy person, something is wrong with him. He's fighting an invisible person. Or whatever. And so with Isaac, I had an experience where for some reason he had this long monologue, and it's kind of the one that ends with the cowboy always keeps his, you know, blah, 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 blah. And for some reason I was just doing this on mic. I don't know why, but the whole thing was, and it was hysterical to Tyler because so we do a take, and then, you know, my habit as an actor is to kind of freeze in whatever position I'm in as I'm done with the take, because if they need another one really quickly, I can get right back into it because my body's already kind of ready to go in that mode. So I would just go like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And wait, and then usually a couple seconds later we're either moving on or we're going back. So, you know, I don't hold this for very long, and I'm like sitting here. And Tyler and Corey, the show's engineer, were just like, what is that? And I'm like, it's the character, shut up. It's just what I want to do. And like later that day, 2 or 3 hours later, we reached a scene that I hadn't seen yet, where Isaac and Miria are talking, and they're doing this. And I'm like, I called it, Tyler, leave me alone. I get to do whatever I want in here now. He was like, no, I think you're being so ridiculous that it's actually somehow breaking through the ether and going back in time and inspiring the original animators to make Isaac more of an ass than he is. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. When the show first came out, when the dub first came out anyway, I was in Boston for Anime Boston for, I think, the first time I played that show, which was really fun. And I was about to go on stage for opening ceremonies. They have a huge opening ceremonies. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to pee so bad. I've got time. There's like 3 people going on ahead of me, and the bathroom's right out those doors. Okay, I'm just gonna, to the staff's horror, I was just like, I'll be right back, poof, and just disappeared. Which they hate, by the way. Because in security is like, Tatum is just leaving. I'm like, I'll be fine. And I went to the bathroom. And then as I was washing my hands, as you do, I hope you're all washing your hands this weekend.
Yes.
Especially before coming through my autograph line. I was washing my hands, and next to me at the other sink was a guy dressed as Cowboy Isaac, and I hadn't seen an Isaac Cowboy or an Isaac cosplayer, period. And I'm washing my hands, and I'm like, "Excuse me, are you cosplaying Isaac from Baccano?" And he goes, "As a matter of fact, oh my God!" Jumped onto me, and I was like, "Ah!" And like, jumping around. All these other guys in the bathroom were like. He introduced me to his girlfriend that was outside, who was playing Miria, and they looked great. And I was like, oh my God, you guys are awesome, oh my God, this is great. And then I ran back into opening ceremonies, and they were all like, I was like, guys, I just met the coolest people in the bathroom. But all that is to say that I loved Baccano, and it's one of my favorites. One day, Caitlin and I are going to do a con together, and we're going to cosplay as Isaac and Miria, and we're going to. Yes. But to do them justice, I feel you have to have at least 8 different costume changes. Because, I mean, they're always cosplaying. How do you cosplay cosplayers? It's like, and this one, and now I'm a priest, and now I'm a nun, and now I'm a cowboy. It's hard to do. I don't know how you cosplayers do it. I have so much respect for cosplayers that can walk around all day in like really elaborate stuff, rocking it. Because like, I'm lucky that I have this on, and I'm not destroying it. So, thank you for bringing up Baccano. I really, really appreciate it. Next question. Hello, darling.
Hi.
Hi.
So, were there any awkward moments in the Oron High School Host Club making, like, funny?
No, everything went off without a hitch. It was great. Sorry to disappoint you. Yeah, there were a lot of funny moments in Oron. Some of them made the bloopers. It's not very often that we get to produce blooper reels. I mean, there's always bloopers, but they usually get discarded because there's no room for them, and it's very rare that the Japanese licensors will allow us to do a blooper reel because it's a cultural thing. They do not do bloopers. They for us, and it's an American thing perhaps, and probably a British one too, that we're like, man, we love to see people screw up. It's just, we're like, it's Schadenfreude. We're like, ha, look at that professional having a difficult time doing his job. We're sick. But the Japanese would be like horrified and like, why do you want to see that? That's like, that would be like going to your doctor and being like, can you give me like a reel of your worst botched surgeries? You know, right? They had the same reactions. They're like, no, we don't want you to do a blooper with that. No, why would you do that to yourself? They feel that it's kind of an insult to the product. Now, in the case of Oron, they were a little more lenient because they got it and they were like, oh yeah, that'd be fun, do it. And so they were, but what you never hear, because on the bloopers, we have to be relatively clean. So they only keep the bloopers where it's kind of clean. There are a lot of bloopers that are not clean. I can't share any of them with you now because it's not my 18 Up panel, but a 18 Up panel later. If you're old enough, you should come and I'll tell you about some real bloopers. But my favorite blooper is when, I mean, there's All Bluty is Beautiful, which is classic.
Yes.
There was also me like saying, oh, that line's complete, bleep, because I couldn't get it out in time, and I was like, la la la, this performance was, and it's funny, my favorite kind of blooper is hearing an actor give a line that they know is not working in the middle of it. So they go, hello, my name is Michael Tatum, and I'm here, and I love all of you, and oh, this is not working at all, I'm really sorry. Like, I love that little journey, it's just funny to me. But I had this is the one where I have a throat gremlin, we call them throat or squishies, where like your throat just, you know, if you, I had gone to the booth that day before eating, because I thought, oh, I don't have time to grab breakfast, and I'm so hungry, but you know what, I'll just go in the booth, have an hour to record an Oron, and then I can grab a snack and then come back to record the rest of it after lunch, it'll be fine. Never do that, because I'm in the booth trying to emote and be serious as an actor, and my stomach is like, like that awful, like travels all the way up and out, and Caitlin's like, what is that? I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I should probably call someone. It's coming for another take. Oh, Tom, I keep constantly. So she's saying one of them where I was like, hello, oh, what was that? And I just started, the whole day was like that. So thank you for taking me down that very painful memory. You're a good person. Yes?
In Black Butler, what are your thoughts on the corset scene?
Gross. Gross. Oh, y'all are like, but he looks like his dad. There is a picture of his dad at the landing of the first staircase, and it looks just like Sebastian. Do you want to date your dad? I didn't think so. I may want to date your dad. That's different. And if we can talk for a moment about that, like, I get it. If you get a Sebastian, you get suave, sexy, capable butler. What's Sebastian get out of that? 12-year-old trust fund brat can't even tie his own damn shoes. Not relationship material. I love CL as a character. But the two of them, no. I ship Grell and Sebastian. You may have noticed from the way I talked about Jerry Jewell last night, I like redheads. I really do. Thank you. All right, now I'll just take questions from the audience. Let's see. You, sir, you've got a jacket on. Yes, yeah.
Okay. How have you, because for the script of Steins Gate, the references and stuff are a lot different. How do you handle the script for a show like that?
So Steins Gate had a lot of references that were very particular to the Japanese, and they were references that a Western audience typically would not get. And so the rule of thumb is, especially if the line has to be funny, and usually when they're pulling a reference, it's a funny moment where they're trying to like out-nerd each other, or they're trying to like make a reference to like, oh, you're acting like that person, and it's an insult that only a nerd would get, so it's like, oh, burn, things like that. So if we'd stayed with the Japanese, which we certainly could have done, and sometimes depending on the show we will. It depends on how much freedom the licensors give us and what the director, how close the director wants to say to Japanese. But if it's supposed to be funny, I feel very strongly that a joke only works if you're in on it. So if you have to stop and think in the middle of a witticism or some quip, what does that mean? The moment is past, it's not funny. So the philosophy is, like, if you're reading like the subtitle version, then the subtitles have a responsibility to be as close to the Japanese as possible for anyone who's interested in that. But if in English or in Japanese, if the line's supposed to be funny, then the dub should make you laugh there. because that's the beat the original creators are trying to hit. And as with jokes like humor, it's rarely the specifics that matter. It's the beats, it's the timing, it's the tone. It's the extent to which the characters are invested in what they're saying, whatever it happens to be. Puns, for example, are not funny, but they're funny because of who's saying them. It's never the pun itself that's funny, it's the fact that the audience goes, "Ugh!" That's what's funny. Or it's the comedy from a pun, at least in English, comes from the poor bastard trying to sell it to you. Then you're like, you think that's funny, and that's funny. But the words themselves are only kind of what gets you. So Patrick Seitz and I, who worked together as the adaptive writers on that show, really thought to ourselves, well, you know, let's keep some of the Japanese references because some of them are pretty standard and are cross-cultural, but many of them weren't. And we're like, well, we want them to be funny, so let's make changes that'll kind of communicate the same emotional essence of what the characters are really. That'll communicate the same subtext, even though the surface details are different. And frankly, as a writer, that kind of stuff is fun. I love sinking my teeth in localizing it because I think, and the original creators love that too. They love seeing their original creation go out in the world and make a home for itself in other languages and other cultures, because it proves that at the heart of their vision was something that transcended geography and specific culture. So as a writer, as an adaptive writer, and I can talk more about this at my adaptive writing panel tomorrow for those of you that are interested, that kind of cultural thing, I almost always love the chance to do that. So the approach is to just, again, always with the philosophy of like, well, if it's supposed to be funny, it's more important that the audience laugh here than that the actual Japanese line, if it doesn't have the same effect in English, then it's more important to keep the spirit of the original and not the literal intent, because literalism rarely works, in drama especially. It's very, Japanese works differently than English in many ways. Many people who aren't bilingual or who don't know Japanese, man, those two languages barely even qualify as distant cousins. I mean, they're not, it's not just that they're different languages, but they developed in complete isolation from each other for centuries. And it's not just a question of, well, this means this and that means that over here, and that there's a one-to-one ratio between this word and this word. Most words don't gloss that easily. Like, this word may also mean this, but it also has 5 other connotations that it doesn't have over here, and you're like, well, that's weird. But you have to understand that it's also the way they generate meaning is different. In English, and I'm going to ramble about this for a second, but in English, you may notice, if you think about it for a moment, English is kind of unique among world languages, especially with how we use it to concoct dramatic dialogue. We almost never say exactly what we mean. And that's where the drama comes from, because on some instinctive level as an audience, you're watching going, oh, that's not what she means. I mean, and you can sense that there's a struggle between what she wants to say versus what she feels she can, or vice versa. That's what Attack on Titan is all about for me. Like, as a language thing, it's about people not able to get out what they want to say because they're too busy focusing on just surviving another day. So there's all this they have to keep inside, and so they can't say, I love you, because there's a Titan gonna kill us, you know? So it's like, I run, like everything, all their feelings are distilled into, we're gonna die. And that's the tragic, I mean, the central symbol of the first episode of Attack on Titan is not, spoilers, Aaron's mom dies. But think about it, like in the first episode of Attack on Titan, if you look at it through the lens of it's really a meditation on the tragedy of people unable to speak their minds and be honest with each other because they're too busy trying to live, try to survive. The scene with his mom, when she tells him to go and she covers her own mouth, she can't keep from saying, don't leave me, but she doesn't want them to hear her because she knows they'll come back. It's such a tragic moment when she's like, it's heartbreaking. That's the whole show, is that. Think of all the things Mikasa can't say to Eren because she doesn't know how to get it out there because she's too busy being a badass. All the things that can't be said because there's just no time for it. So in English drama, in general, even in day-to-day life, we don't often say what we mean. We qualify it. We'll dress it up with euphemism. Think for a moment if you were in line for some Starbucks, and somebody, not that this happened today, but it's happened before maybe, and someone cuts in front of you after you've been waiting for like 20 minutes. You might say, excuse me, I believe I was next. That's not what you mean. What you mean is, bitch? And you might say that, but most of us would like find, how can I say that and not say it at the same time? How can I communicate that without actually being held accountable for those words? So that's what English dialogue is all about. And in Japanese, it's somewhat different. You have on one side of the spectrum extremely high context dialogue, where a Japanese speaker can say something that on its own means nothing, but that everyone around them goes, oh, we know what that means, because there's cultural context. For example, the phrase, chotto, which just literally means a little. On its own, it's just kind of floating. It really doesn't mean anything. But it's their way of expressing disapproval. Like, how do you like my sweater? And they might go, chotto, which means it's a little fill in the blank. But that's what we call high context. You have to have kind of lived in that culture to understand, oh, that's what she means when she says, bless her heart. She didn't mean bless her heart at all. So it's similar like that. And on the other token too, and you may notice this in anime, and pay attention to this, and it's, again, this is not a judgment, not to say that Japanese or English are better or worse or whatever, they just operate differently, and how their dramas, how stories are told is different because of the role that language plays in each respective society. In Japanese, you'll notice that the characters in an anime tend to be pretty straightforward. You know, when they're saying something, they're like, you know, you, I don't like you, or you, I love you, or whatever, things like that. And that's not always the case, but this is a real life example. So Brandon, my partner, who's here this weekend, has lived for about 2 years in Japan, in Tokyo. He spent 1 year in Tokyo working for a business, and he was the only English speaker in an office of Japanese professionals. And earthquakes hit all the time in Japan. It's just a reality, and I can't imagine it. It sounds horrifying, but you know, whatever. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment, like, let's imagine that here and in Tokyo, an earthquake hits at the same time. Just a little one, whatever. But if we were sitting in this room and everything started trembling and shaking and things started falling down, I assume we'd all start vocalizing, right? Right? And people in Japan would start vocalizing as well. Now here, what are some things we might say? Shit! Run! Oh my god! We're all gonna die! Whatever. Oh, that's my second shit for the day. Oh, third, I'm done. So, and that's just how we are. Like, none of us feels the need to say, hey, there's an earthquake, because we're like, you know, and if you don't know, I'm out. I'm not my job to protect you. I'm out of here. You know, like, we're just how we are. In Japan, and this happened, Brandon would be like in his office and it would start shaking, and suddenly everyone would pop up and say, with the same intensity that we just vocalized with, pretending to be, you know, under duress, they would all say the same thing. They would all say, oh, yuruturu, 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 which means, literally, it's shaking. Now, think of my position as an adaptive writer. If I had to write a scene where an earthquake hits an office building, and if it's a dramatic scene, nothing's gonna take you out of that moment more than a literal translation of what they're probably saying in the Japanese. I can't have you watching this moment where you're supposed to feel for these characters, and suddenly in English they're going, it's shaking, it's shaking, it's shaking, it's shaking, it's shaking. You laugh because we just don't talk like that here. We don't use language like that. We'd say everything but it's shaking, because apparently it's bad form to be honest in English. So those are just some of the challenges with writing a script like, well, any script really, because localizing, it's a fine line between staying true to the material and the subtext, but also being able to kind of get through the superficial layers to get to what the subtext is. The subtext is always deeper than you think at first glance. So, yes, you in the white sleeve.
Me?
Yes.
I know you're in Free in Dragon Ball Z Kai.
Yeah.
So have you ever seen either Free 50% off abridged or Dragon Ball Z abridged by Team 4-Star?
Yeah. No, I've been living on Mars in a cave with my eyes shut, my fingers in my ears. I know the Team 4-Star people. They're actually really funny and really cool. So yeah, and I get 50% off is my favorite. I love the Dragon Ball stuff, but I like, because I'm more in Free than I am in the Dragon Ball franchise. Whatever. So I love anything. I love parody. I love lampoon. I've gotten to work on a couple of parodies of shows that I've written, like Attack on Titan Junior High, for example. I got to write that as well, which is so much fun. So I love parodies. Yes, you have the CL, I think, way over there in the back. Yes.
How is it going to play
Very difficult. Sometimes because we recorded those shows at the same time, like I would have to be in the booth playing Sebastian for several hours and then go down the hall and play France for several hours, and that is hard. Because there's two also very specific accents, and accent work is difficult. Now, British is very easy for me to do, you may notice. Just because I've been using that accent all my life, man, that opens doors for you. Hello is so much more effective than hi. I don't know, something about the British, Americans especially, are like, oh, we have a British accent. Like, oh, wow, you're suddenly an 8. Instant 8 every time. But the French accent, and I'm fluent in French, by the way, so I have been, because my grandmother was fluent. So I know the accent really well, and so when I auditioned for France, they're like, oh god, this is going to be great. I didn't know I was going to have to do both those accents at the same time most days. So I would be in the booth here going, oh, Ciel, stop being a little bitch. I say that with love. Well, you know we're all thinking it. And then I'd go down the hallway a couple weeks later, or a couple hours later, rather, and have to do this ridiculous accent, which is, you know, by the way, not a real French accent, it's more like an over-the-top, you know, version of the accent that Americans think of French, all speaking like this, but it really just sounds like a French person eating coffee cake, which is great. True story, so several years ago I went to Montreal, Canada, which is French-speaking Canada. It's now one of my most favorite places on the planet. It's French Canada, and so they speak English primarily, well, they speak English, but primarily they speak French. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go to this con that invited me. And thanks, Andy. Andy gets me. So I went to first time in Montreal. Excuse me, Montreal. You have to say it like that, Montreal. It sounds like you're saying Monica Rial's name in a really sexy way. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so I was going to Montreal for the first time, and I thought, oh my god, I haven't actually spoken French out loud to other human beings who speak it every day in a while. So I spent several months prepping for the con, like brushing up on my French. And so I was going to be ready. The minute I got off that plane in Montreal, I was going to be like, bienvenue, you know, to whoever was picking me up from the airport. Get off the plane. Let this be a warning in any of you. Get off the plane, get my luggage, and there's this wonderful woman named Eva who was my handler the whole weekend. Oh, she was such a badass too, and she had this gorgeous Quebecois accent, which is different in French, a little different. I can't do it quite as well, but it's got a little, almost like a little Spanish lip in there a bit. I love it. But she comes up and she says to me in French, now her English is perfect, but it's custom to speak in French first there because they're very proud of their French-Canadian heritage. So rather than saying, welcome to Montreal, we're happy to have you, they would be like, bienvenue, monsieur Tatum. And rather than respond to her in French, my mind stupidly just starts speaking to her in a French accent.
Oh my god.
Wires got crossed and I thought I was being the most charming guy in the world. She's like, bienvenue, monsieur Tatum, and I was like, oh, thank you, it's so good to be here. I am so sorry. And she started cracking up because she thought I was making fun of Parisian French. And she was like, oh, that's good, we hate them. I was like, so the whole weekend was that, me trying to be French and cool and being like, no. Yes, you in the front with the orange. Yeah. They're so much fun. So the Rooster Teeth people for Ruby fans? So I get to play a butler in it, who has like 7 different voices, which is really cool. The Rooster Teeth people were really awesome. I had to Source Connect because they're based in a different town where I work, but they got me into a studio and Source Connected, which is like Skyping. Which is really fun. But man, they do this really cool stuff where the writers and the directors are there with you in your headphones, and they're all kind of talking, but they would do the scenes with me in real time. They would read all the other parts that weren't recorded yet, and so I felt like it's like doing an old-fashioned radio play, which is really fun. Most of the time, voice acting is very solitary, and you're just kind of like, oh, you just have to, you have to be talking to your imaginary friend that hasn't been recorded yet. But they were super, super fun to work with. They loved kind of tweaking the performance a little bit, and they were super, I don't know, I didn't know that they were fans but apparently like the director was a fan of just anime in general, so they knew some of us that they were getting, and they were like, thank you so much for being in this, we really appreciate it. Like kissing my butt, like I'm like, no, thank you, you guys are Rooster Teeth, what are you talking about, thank you. I love those people, they're so much fun, and they make such good content. Ruby is so awesome. Okay, let's see. You in the red hoodie. Yes, third row, fourth row, whatever, I'm not counting. But yes, you, red. Can you speak up just a little bit? Not since doing that season. I learned my lesson. No vengeance for me anymore. Oh man, talk about a... I kind of broke up in the booth a little bit. I cried during that scene. There's a moment when he says the line, I can't watch this. In that moment, do we all know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that's really just me crying, going, I can't watch this. I mean, it happened to be the line, too. But like, Colleen was like, ooh, keeping that. Thanks, Colleen. Yes, you, sir, with you've got like the purple bandana? Yeah.
I studied Shakespeare at my local college, so I want to know what was...
Congratulations. Seriously, that's awesome.
Just remember, be before thy, except after thou. What was that? What was your overall thoughts on Romeo and Juliet and actually getting to play an animated version of the bard himself?
So Romeo and Juliet, which I love. Thanks for not calling it Romeo X Juliet, which everyone does because the X is there, and X is just a Japanese way of, it's like an ampersand in cool Japanese. So it's still technically Romeo and Juliet. But I got to direct the dub as well, along with Bruce Elliott. Taliesin Jaffe, who's a dear friend of mine, wrote the scripts, as did Patrick Seitz, and they went out of their way to try to incorporate as much real Shakespeare as they could into the dialogue. Without marring the sort of context. Because it is Romeo and Juliet, but it's like Romeo and Juliet in a very fantastical anime way. But again, it's just proof that how the Bard stuff is still relevant and is still, still a lot of mileage to be had out of it. Playing William, or Willie, was something I didn't want to do because I was directing it and I don't like being in stuff. I don't necessarily like directing myself and I don't like being in the booth. I just feel like it's weird. I mean, I can't direct my own performances. It's weird. I will overthink it and get 15 takes because I can't decide what's good. So I need an outside voice that's not me going, no, you're good, fine, leave it, you're good, let's move on. Because I'm too much of an obsessive compulsive when it comes to my own reads. So I need someone to shut me down. But William, I was recording with, we were holding auditions and no one, all the people that we needed, that were coming in to read for William just were either too old or too young. We couldn't find someone that was just right. And we were like, what are we gonna do with this? And Bruce Elliott, the other director, was also mad because I was like, you have to be Conrad, there's no one else. And he was like, damn it. I'm like, nah. He was like, we'll get an in read for William. I was like, but fine. And I thought I'd show him, I'm gonna like really botch it and do like the most offensive, like ridiculous, inappropriate voice for this forever, and he loved it. And he was like, oh my God, that's great, because in his moments when he's being like deep, it'll be really sweet. So William goes between being like, oh my goodness, wow, a very typical like foppish Brit, to being like, where he'll like dispense some wisdom just when people need it, and I love those types of characters. So I had a lot more fun with it than I thought I would, but I didn't give myself that role. I was compelled to take that role by the other director who wasn't gonna let me say no. But thank you. I was also getting to work with Brina is also a treat because she's one of my best friends.
Also, my friend just wanted to ask this one. What's your favorite?
My least favorite is that question. You've got someone pointing to you. Yes, you. That's what you need, a pointer.
My question was, so like in script for your shows where you're doing both the adapted script and also like voice acting characters, things like Stargate, like Legendary Hero, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Does it change the way you like interact with the characters while you're voicing them? Because I know Jeffrey we're like doing things along with the characters generally, that doesn't happen with writing scripts.
Right, so when I write the scripts, I never assume I'm gonna be in a show because I don't try to write it would be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna write this for me, because I don't even know how to do that really. I don't know what that means to write for me. I'll be like, oh well, this character has glasses and they're kind of smart. I'll probably be asked to play him, so I better, I'm gonna give him some easy lines to say. It changes a little bit, because normally when you go to record, as we were talking about yesterday with Jamie and Monica, we don't have access to the scripts as actors before we go in. So if you know how to tap into that experience, it can really make it very genuine for you as an actor, because you're hitting all the beats in real time with the character as they're doing it. Like, so you're discovering things as they are, and it makes it very real. Like the Tenya Ida line where he says, "I can't watch this," that was very real for me. I didn't see it coming, and so it was devastating emotionally, and then Colleen got that on mic, and it was perfect. It's a great way to work, because it makes it very real for us. It's a very satisfying way to work if you have to work fast like that. But when you do have access to the scripts ahead of time, as you do when you write them, it's different. Now, the plus side is, when I write a script, I also act out everybody's part, because that's part of my job, is to make sure it can be vocalized in the booth with enough breath. I've got to make sure that line will fit, that it, that it makes sense, and so I perform it all. If you've ever been next to me on a plane while I'm writing a script, it's hysterical. Everyone thinks I'm insane. Discovers I'm insane. Because I get very into it. But, so it can make it really hard, because then I've already got, I've already played all these characters, so if I happen to be given one of them, or win one of them in the actual recording process, then I've already kind of got them locked in, and the challenge is to kind of break myself of that habit, so that the director has room to tell me what they want, what they hear, and what they'd like me to do. And that's been a learning process. Luckily, I've been writing for about 13, 14 years now, and so over time, I've learned to just let go, and once I'm done with the script, I've acted it all out, and then I forget about it. It's like doing a play for me. Like, I try to have only the vaguest memory of it, unless I'm asked to approach it again and do it as an acting point of view. So I have to be an actor while I'm writing, but I have to let go of being a writer while I'm acting. It's hard, but yeah, still learning. Grell, I'm gonna regret this.
Do you think Sebastian and Tamakisu would get along?
No. No, he'd kill you, probably. Use. Yes.
If you had to pick 3 characters, you boys, to go out on a night on town with Sebastian as the designated driver.
Well, that's no fun. So 3 characters in addition to Sebastian. Sebastian's like the chaperone. Isaac, please. You gotta have Isaac. That'd just be fun. You can make buying chips at the convenience store an adventure. Isaac, Scar. You need a brooder. Every team needs a brooder.
Yes.
Every group dynamic needs someone who's like, this is gonna suck. This keeps you level. And France. Every team also needs a wingman. Anyway, I have time for a handful of more questions, because we started a couple minutes late. So I'm going to try to do a lightning round, which really the challenge is on me to shut up. So I'm going to pick you. Ask me as quickly as possible. You, front row.
My favorite character you've done is Yama from Tokyo Ghoul. I just kind of wanted to know, how was it working on that? Like, was there a scene that was particularly fun to do, or was it hard to keep a straight face during some of those crazy moments?
Oh, it was always hard to keep a straight face, but it worked, because not being able, because he's such a weird over-the-top character that if I find myself laughing in a take, it would often just work. I'm like, oh my God, that read works, because he's insane. I had the engineer, I'll tell the story very, very quickly. The engineer's name was Dominic. I call him Dom. It's really awesome. He was his first week working, and he didn't know anime. He was just a really good engineer. He came in and he had to be my engineer for a self-directed Skiyama session on Tokyo Ghoul. And he was like, okay, and I'm like, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna jump in there, and you're just gonna record me doing the scene, and we'll kind of come out and edit together. It's, again, jumping back and forth, being director and actor. I don't like to do it, but I had to for that show, for some things. We had to do the handkerchief scene. That was poor Dominic's initiation. His very first recording was me in the booth doing that. And I told him, I was like, I'm very physical, and I'm gonna do some weird things. So please don't look at me. And he was like, I don't wanna look at the screen either. And I was like, well, we have to, so it's fine. And I did the thing, and it was really, I did some weird things in the booth to get that out. Because you have to. I mean, if you're playing a character like that, you've got to be insane. And I did it, and I turn and I look at Dominic, who's just like, what the hell do you people do here? And then later, like a few weeks later, we had to go in the booth, and he was like, he'd kind of hit his stride. He was like, okay, I think I got my head around you crazy people, and I'm enjoying this, okay, whew, all right, the worst is over. And then the second hanky scene happened, and he was like, we gotta do this again? So yeah, it was really fun. You've had your hand up. You were the clown last night.
Oh, God.
What's your question? Yes, you. Maybe. I may have to take off. I don't do pictures necessarily because then everyone wants to be a feeding frenzy. So, you were a clown last night. Like standing right there? Okay, we'll close it that way. So, okay, 2 more questions really quickly. You, front row.
Okay, I don't know how far you are in the Baccano manga and Twilight. What do you think about Sion's twin?
What? Way to ruin it for me. The other pointer, next to the white hair. Yes.
I love you. My friend paying me $3 to ask you this. Do you know the way?
No.
To San Jose? No. Oh my God. One more question. Someone that has a big, again, you, red hair, and you're floating away. Yes, you, yes.
Which one characters do you ship the most?
What? Which Orion character do I ship the most? Don't I need another character?
Yes.
Okay, so you mean which 2?
Yes.
Kyoya and shut up.
Oh my God.
Kyoya and Hikaru.
Woo!
Oh, scandal! Or Kaoru, whoever's available. Guys, thank you so much. I'm gonna wrap it up. Stay where you are real quick. I'm gonna get a picture, a selfie with all of you.